Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. And today we're going to go over all the books that I read in October. So this was a really good reading month for me. I read a total of 12 books, which is by far the most books that I've ever read in a month before. And my average rating was 3.67 stars. So it's actually above my normal average, and I'm really impressed with that. I had a lot of good reads this month. None of them really reached a 5-star, but you'll see why as I talk about them. But I'm just really happy with the amount of books that I read, and I'm really happy with the range of books that I read this month. Now, I know it's been a while since I've had any DNFs on these lists, but this one does have a DNF, so I'll just remind you that when I do these sorts of videos, I have actually decided that when I have a DNF to just leave it at one sentence long on why I DNF'd the book. There's a lot of reasons why I put this rule in place, but the main reason is that if I don't finish a book, I don't think that I should really tell you about the book and rave on about what I didn't like about the book, because I feel that that's just not relevant towards anyone else's reading experience. And if the one sentence doesn't deter you from the book, then you should have the right to read that book yourself. So without further ado, let me get into all the books I read this month, starting with my DNF. So the book that I DNF'd for this month was The Rogue King by Abigail Owen. And ultimately, this book was just too jam-packed with too much information, and almost all of it wasn't relevant. And once we got to the first spy scene and I read Vibrator Thumb, I just couldn't do anymore. So the first book that I actually read this month was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I in fact read the entire series to start off this month. So the basic synopsis for these books is that we're following Cassie, who gets recruited into an FBI program for teenagers where they're called the Naturals, and they sort of have these natural abilities. Like, one is a very good lie detector, one's very good at reading facial expressions and emotions, and she is very good, along with another person, at reading people in general and piecing together certain details to find out certain things about those people. So she's essentially sent to live with these other gifted teens, and it's like a program where they're learning, but they're also helping solve these crimes. So essentially, so many people have said this before, but it is literally Criminal Minds with teenagers. That's the best way that I have to describe this book, and I loved it so much. I love books like this with behavioral analysis in them. I loved the journey. I will in fact state that yes, it is quite young adult, not in every aspect. So obviously we're following teenagers, and in these books there are serial killers, and we are getting the killings described to us. So it's not young adult in that way, but it's young adult in the context of the way people are talking to each other, the relationships that are being had, those sorts of things. So as much as I was fighting for chemistry between certain characters, I didn't mind that it didn't happen because I understood that it was young. I went into it knowing that it was young. So it didn't deter me away from my rating of 4 stars, because it was still so good. Like, the whole series, every single book in this series was rated 4 stars by me. The novella was 3.5 stars purely because it was so short, and it didn't need to be there, but I did enjoy what it was at the time. So I can't really tell you the synopsis of any of the other books because it will give away things for the first book. But in the first book, essentially, like, our main character's mother, she's missing. They didn't find a body, but she's believed to be not alive. And so that has sort of jumped her into, like, she doesn't know how to feel around her family that are taking care of her. So when she gets this opportunity to work with the FBI in this program, she jumps at the opportunity because just something different to do, but also to be around like-minded people like her was like a little bit of something that she definitely wanted to do. So the books in this series are The Naturals, Killer Instinct, All In, Bad Blood, and the novella is 12. And I've really enjoyed all of them so much in different ways. They were all quite different from each other, but still very similar in the way that they were talked about. And honestly, it's hard for me to put into words exactly what I liked about it. It was just really enjoyable for me, really bingeable for me. And that really started off my month so well because I read these books so fast that I was so excited to keep reading. This was just so good. And I did in fact shock the book club when I said I read the whole series, but I couldn't not. I am the sort of person that if a series is really good and I have more than one of the books, I will in fact binge that whole series, if even at the cost of not reading another book that I'm excited for. So I loved getting back to like who I am as a person when I read, and just binging that whole series, and it was just so good. I honestly just recommend it so much if you're into this sort of thing. Like, just know going in that it is written quite young, so it is quite simple to understand. But I obviously, in books like these, do predict the ending or who's responsible pretty early on. But this was the sort of book that I still enjoyed the journey getting to those answers that I did predict. And in fact, I predicted the first book, I half predicted the second book, and the third and fourth book were, well, the fourth book was easy to predict certain people, but the third book I didn't really predict at all. It was sort of more mysterious but blindsidey, and I kind of liked that a lot. Like, I binged this whole series in 5 days. All 5 books were read in 5 days. So I was a little bit shocked with how fast I read it, but I don't know what happened. I just binged them, and they were so easy to read. The next book I read was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, which I also rated 4 stars. Now, this is basically following a diviner. Her name is Six, and she and 5 other diviners are these sorts of people that they're essentially drowned to dream to find out what fate holds for them. And they're close to finishing their 10 years of service, and they're so excited to see what happens next and go out into the world. But this is sort of following the main character as her fellow diviners start going missing. And she ends up asking this knight that she kind of dislikes, but kind of also respects in a way. She asks him for his help in finding out what happens to his diviners. So him and his king sort of are meant to be helping her find out the truth of everything. And she's sort of going through a little bit of the challenging of her belief system and what she's going to do if that belief system is basically cracked beyond repair. I really loved how atmospheric this book was. It was just such a perfect gothic vibe, and it just hit the spot on exactly what I needed at the time. Reading this after a book series that I enjoyed so much and binge read, it was a little bit slower for me to get into because I expected it to be more complicated, but in fact it wasn't actually that complicated, and this humour came out of it that I didn't expect, that had me cackling at times, and I just enjoyed it so much. The way that this so easily became such like a favorite for me. Obviously, it didn't get to 5 stars. There was just something slight that was missing in the vibes for me. I think I needed maybe more chemistry or a little bit more world building, because we were just sort of following along as we went. But it was so easy to be immersed in this world that a lot of that got put to the side as I read it because I didn't mind. And honestly, I didn't know when I was reading it how it was going to be expanded into a duology, because I believe there's a second book coming out, and I believe she's sort of known for having duologies. I didn't realize until literally the last chapter how it would expand into that, but I do like how we're going to expand into it. I do appreciate that we're going to explore more into what's happening after the events of this book, and I can't wait for the next book to come out, honestly. I haven't read her other series, the One Dark Window series, yet, and that was what everyone was reading last year, I believe, and I started off with this book, but I don't think it's to the detriment of my reading. I think that, honestly, starting with this book has still gotten me excited to go back and read One Dark Window. It is sitting up on this stack on my shelf, so I will get to it, but honestly, I just love her writing. It's just so beautiful, and to read a book that has such poetic, atmospheric writing was just so nice for me, because I love being immersed into books that suck me in, and I can sort of see what the characters are seeing, and like approaching even the sort of magic system that's happening in this book. It was really interesting, and I did really enjoy that aspect as well. Amazing book this month, and I can't wait for the next one, honestly. I think it comes out next year. I'm unsure. It's on my list already to go get and to read. So the next book I read was Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. And so this was the first horror book that I read this month. And it is the first full-length horror book that I have read ever. I listened to it via audiobook because I thought that it would immerse me more into the story. And I was in fact correct. This is such a good audiobook, because there are certain aspects of it that just, they immerse you really easily. But like, we're going between two different timelines, one in 2012 and one in 1912. And the 2012 timeline, she's reading the journal of her ancestor from 1912, who was a pastor. And as she's reading it in her voice, and it slowly morphs into his voice. And when that happened in the audiobook, I got chills because I've never listened to an audiobook that does something like that. It was just so easy to listen to as well, and easy to understand and pay attention to. Sometimes audiobooks I can tune out. This one I paid full attention to the whole time. I think I was colouring in whenever I listened to it, and it just captured me. I'm from Australia, so I don't know a heap of things about American history, and it's not because I haven't tried, it's just because there's certain things in American history that I just don't hear about. And I'm sure it's even certain things that some people in America don't hear about. So it's sort of set in a time when the state of Montana in America was forming, and it sort of has a historical retelling of the massacre of the Blackfeet Indians and also the hunting down of the buffalo, literally out of spite of the Native Americans. I did in fact know about the buffalo hunting and how it got so bad, but I did not know about the Native American stories and the things happening. And we're sort of following this pastor who is talking to this vampire-like person who was a Blackfeet Indian, and they are basically going on this sort of revenge story, but they're telling their story before they get to their sort of revenge. And throughout the story, they're like plotting revenge on the white people. I really enjoyed that this isn't your typical vampire story where it's like, oh yeah, suck blood, teeth come out, blah, blah, blah. This was just, it was just different. Like, the aspect of whatever blood he drinks, he turns into that thing. So if he drinks prairie dog blood, he will get like buck teeth, fur, like he will look like a prairie dog. If he drinks the blood of the white man, he will look like a white man. And that was so interesting to me. Like, even talking about drinking the blood of like deer and getting antlers. I don't know. It's exactly what I like in a horror in that respect. When he was talking to the pastor, like, we're reading from like the perspective of the pastor, what he's written down, and he's storytelling exactly what he has been told, not necessarily what he's seeing. So when the vampire is talking, he is saying like, my teeth came out from here, and it's automatically known like that he would be taught like pointing here and saying from here, or the stick went in here, or his teeth went in here. And you're not being told where it's happening, but you can sort of grasp from the storytelling what's happening, where it's happening, all of that. And I just sort of enjoyed that, because it's like it's the sort of being told that actually makes sense for the story, and it was really enjoyable that way, and I enjoyed it throughout this whole book. The only reason this book was a 3.5 stars for me is because when we came back into the present sort of storyline, I was at first interested in it at the start of the book, but when we came back into it later, I didn't like how it wrapped up. I think that there was just something completely missing that it needed for me to understand properly why we ended like that. Like, the shock factor, but also I sort of predicted that this sort of happened. Like, I can't tell you what happened because that's spoiling, but I just didn't understand it, and the ending was rushed as well. I don't know how far away this main character was from the events of the past happening, but she got there very quickly, and then when we got there, she found what she was looking for very quickly. Yes, she had help, but it was just a fade to black as she looks at someone and understands, and then it's sort of fade to black, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess that happened. but I didn't like how I liked how immersive the story was as I was listening to it throughout the retelling of history and into like everything that he had done. And I liked when we went into the pastor's perspective, but he's telling what he's experiencing, who he's talking to, and who is like essentially dying and who's living and who's connected to who. I enjoyed all of that. I personally think that if it didn't have the present perspective, I would have enjoyed it a whole lot more. I think it didn't even need to wrap up the way it did. I think that other things could have happened. Like, we could have had it more explained instead of jumping forward 100 years. There's just something that didn't quite get me. Like, as much as I was enjoying the style of horror it was, I wasn't getting the horror feeling for a start. I was getting more historical feeling, which was great. And I loved that a lot. But the ending just rubbed me the wrong way and kind of annoyed me, to be honest. And so it ultimately came down to a 3.5 stars. But I am interested in reading his other books that he has written. He's written a fair few. And from the sounds of it, they are pretty good as well. So I will continue to read his books. But just this one, I think the ending just threw me for a loop a little bit and confused the heck out of me. Next, I read the 3 books that are out in the Sworn Soldier series by T. Kingfisher. So I started with What Moves the Dead, went into What Feasts at Night, and then read What Stalks the Deep. Now I listen to all of these on audiobook as well because I am trying to immerse myself into these horror books. All of these books in this series follow this retired soldier, and in the first one they receive word that their childhood friend, has fallen ill and is essentially dying. And so they venture off to spend some time with them and like see what's happening. I believe the first one is inspired by The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And I have never read that material before, but I actually believe I've heard about it before as well. But I enjoyed the aspect of this book. I always enjoy books where nature takes over. And I don't know why that is. I didn't expect that to be something that I enjoy. But when, like, say, for example, your body starts growing mushrooms because nature's taking over. Or I read a book earlier this year where they ventured into a forest, and if the forest didn't like them, they sort of came out the other side with their head in their hands, and there was like plants growing out of them and branches. I don't know. I just really enjoy those sorts of aspects in these sorts of books. And I think that's definitely a horror subgenre that I'm really enjoying. I don't know what that subgenre is called, but just with the idea of nature taking over, it just gives me a fantastical element to match into my fantasy books that I read that I just really, really enjoy. And in this one, we're sort of discovering these spores that are taking over, like, the hares and this woman. And I just really enjoyed it without giving too much away because it's only like a 160-page book. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of it. I really enjoyed how eerie it was and just little things that she was learning. It was so interesting to me because it was just so grotesque in a certain way, and it was so creepy as well. And I don't know, I just loved it so much, so I rated that one 4 stars. And then I went into the second one, What Feasts the Night, and this is sort of following some Romanian folklore, which I can't remember if it was said in the book what it was called because I was listening to it, but I looked it up and it said it's based on a marae. But then when I looked that up, it said marae is not a thing, and that it's probably more closely based to a mare. And that's a person who sits on your chest when you're sleeping and essentially steals your breath. And it's basically the folklore that started the idea of a nightmare, but also the sleep paralysis demon. I did enjoy this less than the first one, but I rated it 3.5 stars. It wasn't too much less. I still liked how eerie it was, and like the creepiness of these books is just so good. And the way it is written is just perfect, so atmospheric of what exactly you're meant to be feeling. Like, it's meant to feel off-putting and just like uncomfortable, and I do enjoy that. But I think that ultimately this reminded me too much of a Supernatural episode because I'm a huge Supernatural fan. So just having that episode in my head while I'm trying to listen to this audiobook, I think made the experience a little bit less for me, which unfortunately is my own fault. It's not the fault of the book itself. And I also ultimately just don't think that it's as interesting to me as like nature taking over. Yes, it is just as scary, and I actually did enjoy it in that aspect, but the subject matter didn't hit as hard for me, therefore I couldn't overlook the banter that was happening, and almost the banter where the main character is oblivious, which was really good in the first book and was kind of good in the third book, but the second book, it just got to me a little bit. But the third book, What Stalks the Deep, I rated 3 stars. So as we're going, we're like lowering half a star based on my enjoyment of the subject matter, not the writing. So the writing was still just as good, just as atmospheric, just as eerie, but the subject matter of the third one just didn't hit for me at all. It's basically a Lovecraftian style horror with a creature called a Shoggoth, and I'll put a picture of it on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. But it takes place in an abandoned coal mine in West Virginia, so we're venturing to America now. Like, the first 2 books were set in sort of European countries, and like I think the main character's from France or something, but we're venturing into America, and I got really excited because I'm like, oh, abandoned mine shaft, what creatures lying down there, people are going missing, this will be fantastic. And it just didn't hit quite right for me. I think because maybe the audiobook, I wasn't getting the idea across on what this creature looked like, and it was only after the fact that I could look it up and go, oh, I get it now. And also, I just don't think that I melded with it. It was giving me more an alien came in and did something, and I just maybe don't enjoy alien stories as much. I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it as much as the first 2, and it didn't give me the same sort of feelings. But I do understand that this series isn't finished, I don't think. I think they're going to continue, and they're all like based on different folklore, so maybe there will be one in the future that I enjoy just as much as the first one. Hope is not lost. Now, the next book I read was The Wedding People by Alison S. Patch, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. Now, this is basically about a woman who has vowed to take her life in this hotel room, and when she gets to this hotel, she realizes that the rest of the hotel has been booked out by a wedding, all these really happy married people, and she's just getting over a divorce where her husband has cheated on her. So she's entered into this hotel, and she sort of meets up with the bride, and the bride finds out her plans, that she plans to end her life in this hotel room, and she's having none of it. She doesn't want her to ruin her wedding. She's saying things like, how could you do this to me, even though they have never met before. It was quite funny in that respect as well. This was one of those general fiction books that actually held my attention. It's very hard sometimes for me to find a good general fiction book that does that and doesn't bore me a little bit at the start and before it gets into things. But this one really did it for me. I really enjoyed the dark humor that was coming out. I really enjoyed the banter between certain characters. I was really enjoying also that we were sort of just in the one perspective, but we were learning about the other perspectives as we go. Like, they were telling her things. Now, in that respect, we had instances where she was like having a conversation with someone, and we were seeing the conversation, and then all of a sudden she'd say, and then they explained this to me, and then we explained this, and then we parted ways. And I think it took a little bit for me to get used to that, but it gave me a disconnect that I didn't really enjoy in my reading experience. Again, this may not be the experience that other people have with this book, but me personally, I had a little bit of trouble holding my attention when those things happened, because it felt like, it's almost like I was skimming a page without skimming a page, you know? So I was getting the gist across, but it was like, oh yeah, forget about that, and then move on. And in that respect, it was a little bit much for me. And also, there's certain things that kept happening that were like exactly for shock factor, which I get, but certain things came out of nowhere and then weren't explained again. They were basically forgotten about. I'm looking directly at the guy that did obscene things to that car, and it just wasn't explained at all. Like, we didn't find out who did it, why it was done, whether they caught the guy. Who knows? I have no idea. But like, shock factor things like that were happening out of nowhere, and I was like, okay. I enjoyed the story. Like, don't get me wrong. It's just little things here and there that I was like, don't know about that. But I was enjoying the journey that we were going on. I was enjoying the journey the main character was going on. I enjoyed her getting to know certain people. And yes, I sort of predicted again how it was going to end. And if it hadn't have ended like that, I probably would have been pissed off. It was less of a, oh, I know what's going to happen, and more of a, I hope this happens, because otherwise I'm going to be so angry at this book. And it's also, you think that certain things are going to happen as well, and they don't happen quite the way that you think they will. Like, I personally think that the way her ex-husband came back into the story was almost too idealistic for the ending of the story. And I feel like we could have gone without that. I could have gone without seeing him ever again. But it was sort of wrapped up in such a neat little bow at the end that it gave me a good experience, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed that it ended like that. And I enjoyed that you don't sort of see her future, you just sort of see her decision into her future. I did enjoy that. But I didn't enjoy how almost too perfect the wrap-up was. And that's my personal issue, honestly, and not to do with anyone else really, but that's just how I felt in my reading experience. And I did have a friend, because this was our book club book for this month, which is November, because we start in half months, and I had a friend who had the exact same experience as me, and I'm waiting for the other friend to read it as well, and then we're going to meet up for book club in a couple of weeks. But until I know what everyone else thought of it, I don't have a heap more thoughts to expand on. But yeah, just certain things just didn't run me the right way. But ultimately, I enjoyed how beautiful the story was and the message behind it. And I do recommend this book very highly, because it was really good for the message it had and the journey the character was going on and how she was coming to certain discoveries. But ultimately, I think it just had too many shock factor things and not enough depth into the conversations that were happening. And that's just a personal opinion that I have, honestly, about this book that not many other people would probably have, but that's what I thought. Okay, so I had a short break. I had to charge my camera. So the last book I read for October was The Serpent's Bride by Catherine Ann Kingsley, and this was an ARC copy of this book that I received to read. This is basically following our main character, Nadi, who her family was basically slaughtered by this one vampire called the Serpent, and she has plotted revenge for the last 80 years against this person, and she finds her opportunity when he is put into an arranged marriage with a human girl from the outskirts on the farmlands of the city, and she decides to take her place so that she can get revenge on his entire family. So take out his entire family and then him. So she ends up being this fake bride, and it's sort of exploring what happens once that sort of gets put into place. This book was really fast for me to read and kind of addictive in that way. And I was really enjoying it. The way it started out, I was very excited for what it was going to explore further. Like, I actually thought that this was going to be one of the top books that I read this month. I was looking at it being a 5-star. I was really shocked at how good it started off. But slowly, the initial motives that the main character had, they started to go on the back burner, and it wasn't concentrated on as much, and she was getting sloppy. And in my opinion, for how strong she started out and how angry she was and just vengeful, I feel that she forgot about it too quickly. Now, I'm understanding that in this book, it was not fully revealed, but I believe there's a mate bond in this book. So putting that into perspective, yes, there's a certain aspect of that in fantasy books where they don't really have control over their feelings. But she forgot about this so quickly. Like, it wasn't just him that she was trying to get vengeance against. It was his whole family. She had opportunities. She forgot about every opportunity. It almost was like she wasn't focusing well enough, so things she was doing, I'm surprised no one noticed earlier what she was doing, because she wasn't being careful about it at all in the slightest. And she stopped acting like this other girl and she started to act like herself, and that was almost too much of a change from the character, how we were introduced to her. So for me, I didn't really feel a connection with her, like, as she continued, because I was like, why did you do that? I thought that your plan was this. And yes, I understand that when you get, like, into the situation, your plans may go out the window, but she completely changed in a way. Like, she was still just as violent. She was still not just as vengeful. She was still thinking about it, and she kept reminding herself, I'm here for this, so why am I doing this? So, like, I get it to a certain extent. It just annoyed me slightly that she got so sloppy, and she was so cocky that she wouldn't get caught. And I just felt that it was almost careless on the character's part. Like, she's in such a violent situation. Whatever you feel, you shouldn't trust too much when you're in this situation. And she just kept trusting too much for my liking. I really did enjoy the plot. The idea in this book that the wilds, or nature, like trees, foliage, anything that's natural, like plants, the fact that there's an idea that it would take over if you let it. And they have in this city with the vampires, because the vampires, like, don't like the Fae in this series, and the wilds is where the Fae live. And when they have real plants in the city, they surround it by cast iron. They surround it with iron bars so that the wild can't spread. And I really enjoyed that. Again, I love books where nature takes over. I love reading things like that. So that was, like, really, really good. Like, they have fake plants in this city because they're scared of the wild spreading. So that aspect was really good. I also could see a very clear connection with, like, in this book, with, like, native people versus the colonizers in a way. And the native people being, like, the Fae. I think they kept calling them the natives, or just certain names that linked back to Native Americans for me. And it could be because I just read Buffalo Hunter Hunter. But in my opinion, I could see the connections, like, really well. This is coming from someone who doesn't live in America, so it's, like, not accurate, but I do live in Australia, where we have the Indigenous people that were on the land when the British came and, like, colonized our land. So I know the history of Australia and the parallels with that even. Like, every country has a similar story, surely. And the parallels with that were very clear to me. So it was very much like a race war in this book. And, like, you've got mafia elements in here as well that were, like, really intriguing for what was happening. But yeah, it's just literally the only things I didn't like about this book was how sloppy her characters got, because she was so passionate at the start, vengeful, like I said, and she just forgot about it almost. And again, got too cocky. So when the ending came, I kind of predicted what was going to happen at the ending only because of how cocky she got. I knew that it was going to end the way that it did, but I did not expect how it's going to expand into the next book. So I am, in fact, very excited to continue this series. But ultimately, this only got to a 3.5 stars for me because it was lacking in her character, and I ended up liking the villainous character more, which happens to me a lot, don't get me wrong, but I just normally also like the main character or the heroic character in a way. So yeah, it didn't hit on that respect, but hopefully now it'll get better. We will see. But I did enjoy the writing overall, and I am excited to see what this author does from here, because I don't know, I had a good time. It was just the character that pulled it down for me, I think. So there are the books I read in October. I'm so happy with my reading this month. You have no idea how shocked I was when I realized I had read 12 books, because my previous high score, my previous personal best for reading was 8 to 9 books. And having 12 books was really exciting for me. November probably won't have as many books because I feel myself slowing down already. We're on the 5th of November at the moment, and I'm already still on the first book that I've been reading. and it's purely because life gets busy and I don't have as much time coming up to Christmas. We have 4 markets this month, so I am getting into that as well. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I really enjoyed talking about the books that I read this month. I am trying to keep these videos a little bit shorter than I was before because it is a lot to watch a 50-minute video, so I'm hoping that this one's a little bit shorter again, but I'm excited to see what this next month holds and to meet you in my next wrap up. I have a couple of videos lined up before then, but I will see you in one of the next videos. Bye.